welcome to the Boba Joe Show.
Hello, hello, hello. How's everybody doing? Out in print media land.
Yeah, hope you're all doing well. I'm doing rummaging, as the intro was playing there. I was looking at some of the old magazines. I got pull-out posters in them. Look, this one I got Barbarella on it.
Oh, Barbarella, Queen of the
And then what's
Galaxy.
on the other side?
Oh, yes.
I didn't even know I had
Very
that because
nice.
it's never been on the wall. It's just been sitting in a magazine on the floor for 2 or 3 years.
Isn't that, though, the ultimate conundrum back in the day, or even in present day, as far as you're concerned? You get a free poster, but it's actually two posters, and then you have to make the decision.
Yeah.
Which one do I go with?
Yeah, I've had a
Do I go
Mando
with
one
the
on the
movie?
wall, and I've had a nice Kong one of, what is it, Destroy All Monsters getting ripped apart. But they're all from that Empire Film Magazine, which is a long-running UK mag. But we used to have an Australian edition of this, and the Australian edition ran for, I want to say it ran for 10 or 15 years, because I was buying it for about at least 10 years and reading it every month. But then it went tits up a couple of years ago, so it doesn't exist anymore. But occasionally you can pick up this. I mean, this one says summer 2024. This is an actual import of the UK version, because the Australian one doesn't exist anymore. I've still got lots of old issues of the Australian one sitting around here. I mean, here's one they were doing 2017. So you got what's on the cover there, the old Train Spotting boys.
Maybe around the time Train Spotting 2 was.
Yeah, that's what it is. Hang on, T2. They're being a bit cheeky there. T2.
The other T2.
Yeah. But yeah, they were still doing. See, look, that poster's still in that. Whatever's in there, I haven't taken that out. It's a double-sided something with Jennifer Lawrence on there and Passengers and Chris Pratt. I have no idea what that is. Some kind of science fiction thing.
Yeah, and just in case you haven't guessed yet, folks, we're kind of having a general chat today about print magazines, and
Yeah.
it is a bygone era. It feels like, at least. I still walk past the newsagents and will look in from time to time, but I do not regularly buy magazines anymore. I think
Yeah.
it's fair to say that I'm kind of just past that point in my life. Sadly, in many ways, as I'm sure we'll talk about
Most of the
today on
stuff
this
I
show.
used to buy, they stopped printing or it went out of business. A lot of them just are gone because the market shrank, and as digital media grew and grew, like YouTube, streaming services, just all kinds of digital media, tablets. I've got tablets I can load up and read comics and all kinds of PDFs and stuff on. It's much more convenient than trying to track things down. So a lot of them have just gone out of business as other entertainment options and money spending things have come along.
I was thinking there, as you were, just talking about the Australian edition of Empire. I
Yeah.
wonder if the fact that, the way for a long time, Australia and Europe were a little bit behind the States when it came
Oh yeah,
to
always.
movie releases. I wonder when you kind of caught up with the rest of the world. Was that to the detriment
Well,
of
I can
the
tell you
Australian
one of
version
the
of Empire?
times. Well, I don't know about the magazine, but Avengers came out first in the world in Australia. Not Emma Peel Avengers, but the modern Marvel Cinematic Universe Avengers. I don't know why, but it came out first in Australia, so that was cool. But I was looking up some stuff the other day. We talked about Jurassic Park a bunch of times, both the movies and toys and that. But I looked up actual dates of when it came out, and it was like 93 in America, and then it was 94 in New Zealand, and it wasn't until the middle of the year, and going to that mid-year period when the most people were going to the cinema. I mean, the most of the year, people were still going throughout the entire year. So I noticed it was anything from 3 to 12 months that we would get a movie after America. Typically, it was 6 months or more, whereas now we get stuff often at the same time, or it's a week or two difference, or a month at the most, or sometimes occasionally something will actually come out earlier, which is really weird, like that Avengers did. But that was post year 2000. That happened. Just
I still remember the absolute thrill of having seen Jurassic Park in the cinema maybe a few months earlier, and then for some dude I went to school with, he came back from the States with like an American VHS of Jurassic Park, and I couldn't believe it. It's like, you have this on video already? We just saw it in the cinema a couple of months ago. But that was the way the world was back then. We just were not all in sync all the time as we are today.
It's very different. It wasn't until post year 2000 things started being different. It wasn't just films, it was like video games. Like, you would be waiting, it might be a year or two for a Super Nintendo game comes out after America, and that's where it makes it out to the PAL and regions and translations, all that. But speaking of like homegrown Aussie content versus UK and America and all that, one of the single longest running indie mag in Australia, this was a video game, it was called Hyper. And so that one was 2007, but this was running from sometime in the mid to late 90s. I don't remember exactly when it started, but I was buying this for quite a number of years. But it was the only Australian magazine that was all Australian content. Like, even here on this one, it's got the old Joker actually says in the corner 100% Australian, as in all the people that worked on it, they lived in like Sydney, basically, because a lot of the magazine stuff for Australia was around Sydney, as far as who employed people and all that. Even some of the whole building would be like multiple different magazines, the same building. It was all Australian journos and whatever, including there was PC magazines as well as these multi-format video game ones. Whereas most other stuff was like your PlayStation magazine, your Xbox magazine, EGM, CVG. A lot of them were UK mags, or sometimes we'd get like a UK mag and they might rebrand or add in a new editorial or a letter page, and the rest of it would be like the UK version of that.
It's cool though to have that kind of homegrown, option there though as well.
Yeah.
Like 100%.
I've actually met two of the people who used to run this magazine at like a video game expo thing in Melbourne about 15 years ago, and that was right before
nice as well.
went out of business.
You're not depending on having to read like months old news from an American publication that's only just made its way over there. Like, I know we mentioned when we were doing our comic book discussion, I think I may have mentioned that, like, what was current over here, say like in February of 1997, what I was reading was probably actually released in November of 96, because there was that much of a gap of the stuff coming out in the States and making its way over here. So it's nice when you've got your own actual homegrown publication that can give you like a consistent up to date.
I went to there was a thing called Game On at Acme in Melbourne. You think, what the hell is Acme? It's like the Australian Centre for the Moving Image. Basically, most of their exhibits about film, but they've had different stuff. They had an exhibit of Tim Burton's original art for Night Before Christmas, like as in like your actual sketches and pre-production stuff got shipped over to and was an exhibit, like in like an art exhibit thing. They did a video game one that was all in the history of video games, and they had restored original arcade games like Space Invaders, Pac-Man, everything up to, at the time, I think we were up to PlayStation 2, PlayStation 3 might have just come out back then, because this was quite a number of years ago. But there was a massive exhibit with over 100 different video games represented, from arcade games to home consoles. And, you know, it would have like your Mega Drives, Master Systems, Nintendos, and it would have obscure, it would have your Commodore 64 and all sorts of home micros. So it was a really awesome exhibit. And the best thing is, all the stuff that was on display, every single thing was playable. Every single thing was set up so you could actually play it. If it was a computer thing, you didn't have to touch the keyboard. You have some kind of interface set up so you could just punch a button and make it go, sort of thing. So you're not sitting there trying to type in a Spectrum or C64 run prompt. You could just press a button, make it go. They had awesome displays, and I got to go to it twice because at the time I used to be involved with a friend with the website thing years ago. It was non-commercial, but the only time in my life I actually applied for and got like a press pass. So I got in for free. I not only got in for free, I got to go into the actual premiere and see the media thing from the people. Most media stuff is pretty boring, you know, when they're doing like, and now we're opening this exhibit, blah, blah, blah. But it was actually real interesting. The people who ran it actually gave a shit and were quite interesting. I got to go around the whole thing with only me and probably about 20 other people that were actual legit journalists, whereas I wasn't. I was just like someone that did stuff for free. and I got to play everything in there. I was there for about 5 hours, and I played like every machine and thing that was in there. It was awesome.
You were trying it
Just got
all.
a caddy at the door. I just got to tend to too.
Yeah, I can hear Pedro there meowing in the background. I have a little sleepy bear behind me on the chair here, Ollie. But yeah, hope everybody out there in internet land is doing well. I will make mention, while Johnny is away, it is my birthday today. I turned almost 40 today. Not quite there yet, but you know, another rotation round the sun. Managed to pick up a few pieces yesterday. I went on a little Valentine's Day trip to
Nice.
Belfast with the missus and managed to get a few things. Yeah, I was just, don't mind me, Johnny. I was just letting the audience know it was my
Yeah.
birthday and all that nonsense.
So you have
That
any
non-applicable
birthday
stuff.
plans?
Um, Today I'm going to be taking it pretty easy. Like I'll probably just be doing my usual Saturday routine after the show and attending to the house business and the cat business
Yeah.
and all the other stuff I usually get up to. But yeah, it'll be just a nice, relaxy day. Just glad it's on a weekend and I can chill and enjoy it and get chatting to you about these magazines from our past that in some
Yeah.
cases do still exist, but in many cases do not exist,
Yeah, a lot of them are
unfortunately.
gone. Occasionally I'll glance at the newsagent or think there's still a number of long running magazines around, but they tend to be like your women's weeklies and new idea stuff we get here in Australia, which is just all, gossip stuff for ladies. And you'll have things like garden magazines, something to do with motorsport or hobby trains, like real niche stuff. And a lot of the other magazines, there used to be hundreds of titles that just gone away, and there's this tiny selection that still kind of hangs on. There's kind of a couple of eras for me as far as stuff I'd read or was into. Like in the 90s, it was mostly video game magazines I used to read with my friend at the shops. Occasionally we'd buy them, but we'd thumb through everything like EGM, which is our electronic gaming monthly, computer and video games. It was another UK one. It was long running, very popular. But there was a lot of different ones, which reminds me if you check out archive.org, they've actually got a massive amount of scanned magazines on there. You
Nice.
can download them for free. They've got tons of cool stuff, includes ads. Like here's one here, 1995 video game buyer's guide, over 900 games reviewed. I remember seeing that actual issue in the store. You got Mortal Kombat 2, Sonic and Knuckles, Donkey Kong Country, Daytona USA, Earthworm Jim, and you get all the cool ads and stuff, and including the weird ones like the American Nintendo ads for stuff that Sega and Nintendo were doing really strange ads and trying to aim for the trendy, cool teenager MTV kind of stuff at that time. But yeah, there was lots of cool video game magazines. Other ones I used to see the late 90s at the comic shop, action figure and toy review, kind of 97, 99. I used to be looking at that, just looking at toys, and it would tell you about import toys. Sometimes the old issues would be like $1 in the bins, and I'd pick it up just to thumb through and have a look at them. And then I probably didn't read much stuff for quite a while till late 2000s. I was in Australia, settled here. When I settled in a job and had money again, and that I had subscriptions to Games TM, Retro Gamer, which are both UK magazines. I had Empire, the Australian edition, and another one called Film Inc. That was another independent Australian film magazine. I read those for probably 5 or 10 years and have still got lots of old issues sitting around. Occasionally I thumb through them and that. And
Yeah, and Retro Gamer, I think, still exists. I
yeah,
feel
it's
like
like
I
IP,
was still
Imagine
seeing it.
Publishing.
Yes, and I was kind of thinking about it when we were just even talking about doing this as a topic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that if the magazine is focused on, a retro property or like a niche hobby, there's more of a chance that it probably still exists or managed to
Yeah,
survive. I think the magazines that focused on bringing you news about a particular topic, as in like fresh information that you're not going to know about, those have largely been killed off by the internet, just in the same way that the newspapers have seen a major decline. People have, they've their phones on them all the time. They have instant access to information. They can find out all the news at a touch of a button, at the swipe of a screen, whatever other old person description you
Yeah,
want
a
to
lot of
use.
the old cycle of magazines, like your typical, like here's old Hyper, you would have maybe a third or a quarter of the magazine would be news and previews at the start. You get some letters from people. Then you'd get some full like video game reviews, and you might get some other nonsense and ads and whatever. But yeah, like when it got to the days of the internet and became more popular, they had stuff like your old IGN and whatnot and other sites, and all those ones started having like print reviews but in digital, and eventually they all got taken over by doing video reviews, of course, on like YouTube and that, which is much easier and more convenient than trying to read a text thing, because you can actually see the gameplay at the same time and get a better idea about if the game's any good or not.
Big thing about the game magazines, at least for me in the late 90s, was the free demo discs, especially with like
Yeah,
magazines like
the
the official PlayStation magazine UK would have them, and PC Gamer,
devil dice.
would often include a demo disc. And of course we would find out years later, thanks to YouTube and other mediums, that oftentimes these demo discs actually included the entire game. We just didn't know how to hack it and exploit that. But that was a real treat. And once again, though, it's something that the internet has largely killed off, because now,
Yeah,
if there even is a demo of a game, you're going to download it. You're not going to go and get a physical disc.
yeah,
There's
for
no need to
sure.
get a physical disc. That
But another
allure is
cool thing
gone.
in those '90s ones is you would get a lot. Some of the better, longer running magazines would have their own in-house artists that would do original covers and that, and like GamePro would often have, or EGM, some of them would have their own artists doing covers. Computer and video games, and even way old stuff like Zap 64, which is the background on here, would have their own artists that would do all kinds of cool pin-ups and illustrations. Occasionally they'd do nonsense little comics with like Sonic fighting Mario or something like that in the back and the letters pages. And some of them would have a kind of community focus as well. If they had letter pages and people writing, and it was a bit of a kind of club mentality sort of thing, like this is the thing, hobby club sort of thing.
The free item with the magazine phenomenon is
Yeah,
something that
look
was
at this
cool
one
as
going about
well.
multiple covers. This is like when we had
Yeah,
Avengers and things,
variants.
multiple covers.
Yes, as I recall, I got caught up in the Phantom Menace hype for Empire at the time. I think I bought all the Phantom Menace variant covers. I'm sure they're all in a landfill now somewhere. But yeah, just getting free gifts with magazines, like we saw there at the very beginning of the show. They have free posters. Even to this day,
Yeah, I'm
Empire
looking
are
at
still
this
doing
one's
free
got a,
posters.
speak of the devil, this one's got a Star Wars something in there. I won't be
Oh
taking
yeah,
that out.
yeah.
But it's in there.
Well, if Pedro needs something to go to the toilet on, you might have
Oh,
to
yes,
remove it.
for sure.
But like, and it's even, and I know, like, there's the posters, there's the demo discs, but also I remember just, there being a lot of kids magazines that would come with actual like free gifts. That could even be like a free toy, like a little cheap
Pogs,
toy, yeah, all sorts of stuff.
little
I
spinning
wonder,
tops.
yeah, maybe a pack of trading cards of whatever was the
Yeah.
current trend at the time, or
Yeah,
there's
they
that
had some
extra
like that. I used
incentive.
to see in the supermarket here. There would be like a Disney one or something, or it was Disney Channel magazine or some shit like that. And it would always be having like, it was a little small digest thing to be some kind of gift on it. And it was promoting whatever new cartoons and stuff are on the networks. And
Well, as like like yourself, I would have bought a lot of gaming magazines over the years, and I was still probably buying them, I would say, up until about 2009, 2010. I would
yeah,
say I finally bowed out of buying games. I was buying like the official Xbox 360 magazine, I think was the last one I was buying consistently. And then it just got to the point where I don't know, it just felt like the internet had totally just caught up to the point where all the new game news I needed I could get online, and the
Yeah, it
demos I
became
could
fairly
download
redundant.
directly. Yeah, they did. They really did become redundant, as from a news and a demo point of view, especially. Um, Whereas something like Retro Gamer, because it does focus on nostalgia and focuses on a niche part of the gaming,
Yeah, and on
culture.
big, massive articles rather than just news and
Yes,
previews. They had massive original
yeah.
feature articles.
Like when you buy an issue of Retro Gamer, it feels like you're buying like a proper book almost. The amount of research
Yeah,
that
they're
goes into
massive. They're
some
a
of
lot bigger
the
than
histories.
usual ones with less ads.
So like that's what I meant when I was talking about, nostalgia or kind of niche properties kind of continuing somewhat to survive in the print media space. Whereas if you're just a purely kind of news driven publication, you're in a lot of trouble if you still
Just
exist.
having a quick browse in the background on archive.org, just showing some of the catalogs, some of these older ones. You had like Nintendo magazine, you got EGM there, it's got the old Vice City cover, CVG, and then you had stuff way back in the early 80s right through the 90s, like so many different titles. You had like Mean Machines, Game Pro, PC Zone. Look, you got MSX Fan, like that. Like that's a like Japanese only computer. Like that gets its own magazine. So much stuff. They're just an amazing amount of magazines over the years. Like, oh, there's old Retro Gamer. That's the early ones before it took out. I recognise the older logo there before it got taken over and became like different people running it and all that. I've probably got quite a few of these issues somewhere around. But yeah, there were so many great magazines. But that's one genre of magazines, of course, is the video games. I didn't get into film ones until post 2000 when I started watching more films and be able to, have money to buy DVDs and all that. But other magazines, you would get reprints of comics in magazine format sometimes, in Australian editions, UK editions, and we'd get a lot of wrestling magazines from the 80s right through the 90s. I can remember around 2002, there was still some around, but then they were getting the last 2 or 3 on the stands even then, as far as what was around in Australia. And but there's like you got into some wrestling magazines back then.
Oh man, I was like a major buyer of wrestling magazines. So like at the start, I was getting what would be like the official WWF magazine. We'd
Oh, so
get
you were keeping Vince Russo employed.
yes, yeah. Unfortunately, I was.
Can blame you
We would
single-handedly.
we would get the we'd be a couple of months behind. It kind of suited the way I watched wrestling to read the WWF magazine, because I was already months behind on my
Yeah,
viewing because I was depending on videotape. So the magazine, ironically enough, was kind of up to date for me, even though for the rest of the world it was months behind the times. But as I got a bit older and just aged up a bit in life and began to look at wrestling differently and look at it more for what it is rather than what I perceived it to be, I came across a magazine called Power Slam. And Power Slam, anybody who is a wrestling fan who lives in the UK or Ireland will probably know what Power Slam is.
I remember seeing it here, and in New
It's
Zealand.
it was a long running monthly wrestling magazine, and what made this wrestling magazine different to most wrestling magazines at the time, it was one of the first magazines that was just totally not kayfabe at all. It was really in the vein of almost the old dirt sheet Meltzer newsletters, in the sense that
Yeah,
it's
it's also trying to be. It's not just a corporate puff piece like the official magazines. It's trying to
yes,
actually cover. It's a pretend sport, but it's trying to cover as if it's an actual sport, and it would include when wrestlers might have gone and done other stuff like K1 kickboxing or guest fights in Japan and things
yes.
like that.
And it would speak about it for what it was. Like, it would acknowledge that wrestling was a work. It would tell you the names of, like, it would tell you the wrestlers' real names, like not just their gimmick names. Like, it would give you kind of facts about them, and it was a great way for me at the time to actually read the results of wrestling shows that, first of all, like of companies that I wouldn't have even known it would have existed if it wasn't for reading this magazine. But it was cool, like, because they would have like, this all seems so like mundane and silly now, but be able to read the results of a random wrestling house show that, like, took place in front of 500 people. Like, for me, that was like amazing to be able to actually know knowledge like that. It's like, wow, I know what happened at that, WWF house show in Poughkeepsie, New York in September '93, which was the exact same show they ran, all the other weeks leading up, because they just run. That was another funny thing. You'd read the results of these matches and it would always be the same results in every town they went to. Like, the same guy would win every night, the same guy would lose every night. The same match would end in a DQ. Just funny,
So
like, it was kind of
this sounds like the magazine that might have told you what actually happened between Harley Race and Ric
yes.
Flair in New Zealand.
To be
That
honest with
wasn't
you,
official.
like to give you real, like, context, it's probably, if you were to get your hands on a couple of old issues of Power Slam and you were to read them, I would say it wouldn't take you too long to kind of come to the conclusion. It's like, okay, this is where Mark's entire slant on what wrestling is and how he thinks about wrestling comes from. Like, I will admit that a lot of my perception of wrestling as an adult probably came from reading that magazine. The main writer and editor, Finn Martin, he was quite critical. Like, when he thought wrestling was crap, he just outright say it, and he had no problem, writing long articles about wrestlers who may have been doing things that they should not have been doing. And, when people would die, he wouldn't shy away from the fact that, someone was, like, clearly abusing steroids, or, doing things that probably weren't very appropriate. Like, and whereas if you were to buy the official WWF magazine, everything was all
Yeah,
colorful and rosy. And
that's
look, here's Hulk Hogan posing with his totally natural body, dudes.
yeah, that's probably one of the things that haven't touched on yet, especially 80s, 90s magazines of all varieties, whether video games, wrestling, sports, whatever. Um, a lot of them were kind of puff pieces and always be borderline advertising as opposed to journalism, as far as what got written in a lot of magazines. Not Power Slam being an exception, of course. But a lot of things, if it's about films, video games, wrestling, they've got to actually promote whatever it is, even if they're not, even if it's not an unofficial magazine. If they're carrying advertising that's coming from the thing they're promoting, guess what they're going to lose if they say anything bad about the product? They lose their advertising, then the magazine goes away. So it's very implicit that a lot of print magazines often don't have real journalists because they can't actually voice their real opinions because their magazine will be gone pretty much overnight. So it's rare to actually get stuff that is properly independent or not too tied up in advertising and or promoting whatever the official sport or video game or thing is, to actually have a real voice and opinion about stuff. That was quite rare and valuable.
And I think that was the beauty of Power Slam as well, because it was based specifically in this region of Europe, so it didn't have to kowtow to any kind of political influences in the States when it came to the wrestling business. So, as far as I can remember, the magazine itself didn't even have ads. The only ad that would ever be in the magazine was more or less for the next issue, and maybe some, like, random, video or DVD that they were trying to shill, maybe. But even they were UK based advertisements. They weren't actual official
Yeah.
WWF or anything like that. Another cool thing about the magazine, like a lot of print magazines from various genres, they did have a letters page. I did write into the letters page. I think altogether I've had 3 of my letters published in Power Slam,
I
which
had a
I'm pretty
bunch in the
proud
video
to
game
say.
type of ones and a couple in the old Aussie Empire ones.
And that was
And
a
the
bit of a
edit,
buzz
coming to
back
get
in
the
the
old
day.
editorial at the front.
Yes, yes. You get a bit of an insight into the mind of the editor, and
And they used to
maybe it's
have
a monthly thing.
an Empire Letter of the Month would usually get like a freebie DVD, which is one of those like, you know, promo ones they sent out usually without the cover in it.
Yeah, a censor copy of the latest
Yeah.
movie or whatever. But yeah, that is a cool aspect as well of these old magazines. The you possibly kind of interacting with the community through the old pen to paper. I'm
Yeah.
gonna
Me
write a
randomly
letter.
meeting in person two people that used to run Hyper Magazine entirely by accident, having no idea they would be in the same place. Because that video game thing I went to in Melbourne, this was a number of years ago, I travelled from train 2 hours from the country to go into that, and I was at the official opening thing with my like media pass as my, you know, wasn't paid person. I'm just like there on my own time, you know. I was there listening to the spiel as they're talking about the thing. They even had some free beer or something, but I don't like beer, so I didn't drink it. But I was standing there, and like two people came in quite late and got in there, and they were standing right behind me, and I didn't realize, you know, when you sense someone's kind of behind you in a bit of a crowd, because we're just standing around listening to the official person giving the actual opening before we walk into the exhibition space. And I turned around, and I kind of went, "Oh, looks kind of familiar." And then I saw this other guy next to me. I went, "That guy." One guy looks kind of large, kind of broad-shouldered, dark hair. The other guy had kind of, well, he has kind of like proper gingy hair, but he looks a bit like maybe like Shaggy from Scooby Doo or something. You know, it's kind of, and wears kind of like he wears kind of like flared pants and stuff. And I went, and my mind is going, I was putting it together, and two of those two together, I went, hang on, that's the guys from Hyper Magazine, because I've only seen them in tiny little thumbnails in the magazine, but they are known personalities as far as the editorials, and that will have their names on the reviews. So I turned around and said hello to them because I realized who they were. And I said, I was just reading your magazine on the train. I thought I had one right on me.
Awesome. And like I just love the randomness of that encounter as well. Like,
Yeah, because they flew. Sorry, the part I forgot. They flew in from Sydney all the way to Melbourne, so I'd only travelled
yeah,
2 hours on the train. They've flown in from Sydney, and it wasn't a thing they'll typically be going to, because it's they don't get much of a budget as far as putting the magazine together for stuff like, you know, pay for a flight to go all the way down. But it was a pretty major exhibition thing that was on, so it's cool they got to go and cover it.
not that it was like the totally pre-internet age. Like the internet obviously existed back at the
Yeah, but it
time,
was
but it's still
like print stuff then. Like
yes.
I think it was early YouTube, but it wasn't video game review YouTube because it didn't have enough HD or bandwidth or whatever back then.
Like I remember like with Power Slam and not just Power Slam, but like other magazines that would be, you know, focused on kind of niche hobbies and stuff. They would often have like a community page where you could say advertise, hey, look, I want to speak to somebody about such and such a topic, or I want to trade
Mhm.
videotapes.
Yeah,
I have X amount of tapes. Would anybody be willing to buy any of these or trade or do these things, or would
it's not
anybody
like
be willing?
classified ads sort of things. A lot of magazines
Yes,
have that in
yeah.
the back, like trade stuff, and sometimes depending on the industry, like if it was a technology thing, there might be equipment and things, and you know there'd be like useful classified ads and trade ads in the back.
And I heard, well, I didn't heard, I read actually, because that guy Finn Martin who ran the Power Slam magazine, when it finally, you know, shut its doors in 2014, a couple of years later, he actually released a book called Pro Wrestling Through the Power Slam Years, and I'd actually highly recommend this book to put on your wrestling reading list. And I would say that to anybody who's listening now, because he actually has an excellent historical kind of knowledge of the business. But according to the book, and as I mentioned, there was that community section that was in the magazine every month. Um, Apparently there was like a few actual couples, like romantic couples, that met through the magazine from like fans just looking to meet and to like trade videos and stuff. And I think like people actually even ended up getting married as a result of meeting through the Power Slam like
No
community
way.
pages and stuff, which is pretty wild, you know. So I have like a digital copy of his book, Pro Wrestling Through the Power Slam Years.
I'm just
It's
having a
really good.
brief look on Amazon now. I can see it's got some on there.
Um, the thing about Power Slam going out of business as well, like as I mentioned, I bought the magazine every month pretty much from the moment I discovered it, and was buying it for like well over a decade. And the sad part for me was You know, I didn't need it for the news towards the end. Like I didn't care about the news. I really just wanted to read the articles and read like the
Yeah.
opinion pieces.
I mean, that's
And
the
when
thing
I
on the
got,
good indie magazines or ones that aren't just completely tied up with corporate sponsorships, is that they would have good original content and articles and that.
and when the final issue came out, I like there was very little notice. I think it may have even been the issue itself where it was just like, hey, look, guys, we've done the numbers and it's not looking good. This is like the final issue of the magazine. It was
Yeah.
a real kind of shock. It was just kind of out of
At
nowhere.
least they
And
get to tell you. A lot of stuff would go out of print and just be gone, and you never know what happens to
yeah,
it.
yeah, that's true.
Sometimes
That's true.
I experienced this a lot with comic books over the years, where I go to the news agent to go to get something. One month they have it, and then the next month they don't, and the next month they have it again. And you'd miss issues, unlike going to the comic shop where that didn't happen as often. But sometimes I think, oh man, that's gone out of print, and then 2 years later I'd see something on the shelf again. I'm like, what the fuck's going on here? Just they couldn't. The distribution was so shit. Sometimes they couldn't
Yeah.
get something, or they stopped sending it to that part of the bloody island, the New Zealand or whatever.
Or just, you know, it could just be a very random, like, say, for example, I would go and visit my grandmother, and like she would live in a very rural area of the country, just to put it that way. And there was like a village shop that when you would walk into the shop, if you went to the magazine section, week to week, you would never see the same stuff because they just got whatever. It felt like they got the magazines that just like nobody else would want, and they would just get these
Yeah,
random magazines that would show up, and you know, it's like, here's issue 38 of X-Men this week, but when you come back, you know, next month, they'll have no X-Men comics at all, and they might not even have a Marvel
grandmother's
comic. It
missing in
might be
Wall
Batman.
Monthly.
Yeah, it just totally random what you would find, whether it be magazines, comics, any of that stuff. And that was just the way it was for certain areas
Yeah,
back in the
most
day.
news agents in New Zealand would like that, even the main ones, where you just stuff was real random what would turn up there. If you're trying to get month to month any ongoing periodical with a magazine or comics, like forget it. And then like the comic shop, you had a better chance, but you would have to have a pull list and say, no, I want to get this every month, because if you chanced it going in on the shelf, it'll be gone.
Magazine subscriptions were a big thing as well.
Yeah, I had
You
several,
know,
but
for you.
not until I was like not until about 2010 or so, when I had the money to afford 100, 70, $100 for the year, or 12 issues or whatever. And
I used to beg my parents to subscribe to so many magazines for me. They're like, no,
yeah,
no, no. It's a waste of
at
money. You're
one
not going to read
time
them. It's like, I
I had
will.
four. Like, I went from having zero, but when I was working regularly at the old dairy factory a number of years back, I went from having none to having four, because I was looking at everything I actually enjoyed. I was getting Empire and Film Inc. Film Inc. And I was getting Games TM and Retro Game. I was getting four magazines. I was basically one a week, and I'd read them in a week, and that was the main thing I was reading all the time. And at the same time, every day after work, I was playing video games and watching movies. So that's what I was really into.
Here's one for the old memory jogging for you. What about those magazines where you pretty much have to buy it every month in order to collect a piece of something to build
Oh
something?
yeah,
Like
I
I
had a
used to.
dinosaur one when I was about
Yeah.
8 or 10, called Dinosaurs, which I think was
Yes.
another UK
Yes.
thing. It had a glow in the dark skeleton piece by piece that I completed, and then it had a green shell that clipped on the outside, and I completed all that as well. But I don't know what happened to it. I
That's
lost it
right.
somewhere. It was quite cool, and I've seen
It's
on
literally
collectors groups sometimes that magazine comes up. But yeah, there was
the exact
Batmobile ones and
example.
Batman and all sorts.
Yeah. I love that dinosaurs one, man. And I can tell you from memory, Johnny. So yeah, the
Yeah,
first 12 issues of that magazine is what you would have used to build your skeleton,
yeah.
and the next 12 were what built the outer shell or
The
whatever, I
other show
think.
was
And
cool, and I didn't know the show was coming until the first piece turned up, and I'm like, "What's this green thing?" And yeah, I put a bit of green model paint on mine, so it wasn't great looking, but it was okay.
generally I think the way it would work with a lot of those magazines where you would have to be basically collecting it consistently in order to complete whatever the goal was. They would usually be released in January of a new year, at the start of a year. There'd be a big ad campaign. Like I remember with that Dinosaurs magazine, there was
Yeah,
ads
I'm just
everywhere
gonna grab
for it.
some.
And usually what the situation was, they would release the first couple of issues, or maybe like the first 3 or 4 issues. They would release them consistently through like regular retail, but then after that, if you wanted to kind of guarantee that you were going to complete it, you'd want to be going for the subscription, just in case that the shop you were buying them from decided that they no longer wanted to order them in, or there was like a delay in distribution or whatever. So with dinosaurs, I was able to buy it pretty much consistently, I think, through retail. But I remember then later magazines that came out where you had to collect pieces or collect, something to complete something. It was kind of like, okay, now you got to subscribe if you want to be guaranteed to actually finish off what it is you're getting. And there was tons of them. I remember a friend of mine used to collect like a Marvel Heroes magazine that came with the really nice figurines. Yeah, and like that vehicle, I remember there was a magazine that had those Batmobiles.
Yeah, my dad
and
had a whole bunch of one of these magazines that was history of Batman, and the magazine was so thin it was barely anything. You could tell it was really about the die-cast cars. But he gave me a whole heap. He gave me about 10 different ones like this, bunch of Batmobiles and a Batboat, and he ended up doubles of a bunch of them. So he gave me a heap of them. He doesn't collect Batman shit. He just collects die-cast, cars and things and bikes and stuff like that. Or he used to anyway.
You do sometimes still see those type of magazines though, where it's like, here is the collection. If you buy all these issues, you'll get the complete collection. So was that the same type of? You were kind of burned by that. I know it's not technically a magazine.
I was burned
like
by the Transformers ones. I got they're right next to me. I'll grab one. If I can get them out of here. There's so much stuff in there. So this series was called Transformers, the Definitive G1 Collection. I mean, this is volume 27 here with bloody, what's his name on there? This ran for 80-something volumes. Well, that originally it was meant to be about 80 volumes. And the main reason I got it is I'd already been buying the IDW trades of Transformers Classics Marvel US, which was about 6 volumes. And they'd started doing the UK. They only did about 2 volumes or something, and then they lost the license, not the Transformers license, but for the UK reprints went to this. And they promised they were going to reprint all of the UK ones and even like colorize some of them or some bullshit. So I was like, oh, great. You can get all the Marvel US and all the Marvel UK. Some reprints. I thought, great, I'll get that series. And what do? This publisher, Hachette, Parts Works, so they're still around now. They do a lot of Marvel reprints. I think they do DC ones as well. They reprint stuff in multiple volumes. The value's not bad, but they reprint everything out of order. So if you're getting 50 volumes or something and you want to read it, guess what? You're going to be waiting 2 or 3 years to read any of it. And often you're rereading stuff if you really want to get it. But they put it out of order because if you do it in order, no people go, oh, I want volume 1 through 10. Then I'm going to cancel it and not buy any more. That's why they do it. It's a marketing tactic. But when something goes for 80 fucking volumes, and they don't send you 10 of those volumes for over 2 years, and you complain, and then they go out of business, and then it goes to another company who goes out of business because the Australian mob that handled it, because they're all printed in the UK, and quite a number of the editions reprints got mucked up. They had doubles, they had pages out of order, upside down, ripped, still connected together because the machine didn't cut all the way through the page. They fucked up a lot of stuff. So if I'd known the amount of shenanigans going in, they was going to spend around $1,000 over 2 or 3 years and be missing 10 essential volumes for those ones I originally wanted. And then they were going to tack on a whole bunch of other stuff. They added on the Dreamwave stuff, which is fine, but not what I signed up for. And then they started adding stuff from IDW, which IDW was still printing stuff at the time of that. I'm like, why are you reprinting stuff that's in print already from another company and not giving me the ones I actually wanted? And then before they finished it, they kept adding more and more on and just kept changing what was actually in them. So it really pissed me off. So I've still got probably quite a number of these, 50 or 70 out of 80, whatever. One nice thing is that pretty much nearly every volume has a brand new introduction from Simon Furman, whether he worked on that issue or not. It's only a brief blurb, but all up, he's written quite a bit of new introductions for stuff, which is cool. But the format, like the book's this big, but inside it's that American size, so it's quite tiny. And like honestly feel like it's one of the biggest rip-offs I've wasted money on my life. But I don't totally regret getting them, but I wish I had the missing issues that aren't there, because I can never get them now. It's just this was several years ago they stopped doing this.
I'm sure they're designed in such a way, because they're kind of hard back, that if you were to lay them all out on the shelf, when you're missing volumes, it's probably stands out that there's like, you have to complete a picture or complete a silhouette.
The picture of Hot Rod Prime, there's Megatron and B on there. Yeah, when you're missing, you can't see the picture. I've got most of the picture down there at least, but couldn't tell you what's on the rest of them because all the missing ones. But I paid for that. Actually, I forgot to tell you the other dumbest thing. I was missing at least 10 volumes, but guess what? I paid for and got doubles of at least 10 fucking volumes.
And in the hours.
Not the ones I should have got. So, yeah. So it was a real pain. Because the company went out, not the one that published it, the one that handled it in Australia, all they had to do was receive, this is logistics, all they had to do was receive a fucking shipment from the UK or wherever on a ship on pallets, and then like send them out to the people who had already paid and send it to the correct address and information. But they fucked it up and went out of business. How hard is that?
Fuckers. Yeah, well, look, that is
there's my rant on that nonsense.
Well, look, to be fair, it's a fairly brutal example of the subscription service kind of gone bad.
Never again. There's 2 times in my life where I've ever wasted money like that and actually regret it, as opposed to, I don't know, these stupid plastic toys all around me. The other time was when, back in the comic shop, early 2000s, I started buying Dragon Ball Z on DVD, and there was like 3 episodes per disc, and it was the first time it was ever published over here. It wasn't on TV. I didn't even own a TV at the time. I was buying that for a long time and got all these volumes. Ended up spending like nearly $1,000 just to get the bloody show so I could watch it, which I watched on my old PlayStation 2 I bought secondhand. But complete waste of money. Like now you can buy a big box set, so like the whole thing for not even 1/10 of what I paid for it.
Yeah, I remember there was a similar, not Dragon Ball Z, but it was
because it came through the comic shop. You couldn't even buy it at retail.
They did like a manga classic magazine, and it would come with like a free DVD. But you know, it was just too much to try and keep up with financially, because by that point,
you
could just go and actually go into like a HMV or a Virgin Media store and just buy a lot of these manga movies for relatively affordable prices. Whereas the magazine, you were like paying double the price just to get like a very thin magazine that had like a few facts and figures about the particular manga DVD that you're after getting. So sometimes it just wasn't worth it unless it happened to be a movie.
Some of them were almost borderline scams or money making things that didn't have good value to them. But then you had other good stuff like Empire and Hyper and Power Slam that were good value for money.
Lots of music magazines around as well. You know, back in the day, and
Rolling
you could
Stone.
get lucky with a few. Just like
Australia
with
has the gaming, Rolling Stone as well.
But the way we mentioned the gaming demo discs, but sometimes you could be quite lucky with the music magazines and get a nice little compilation CD of a nice mix of stuff. I remember Kerrang magazine back in the day had loads of new metal and all sorts of that type of shit on free CDs that I used to enjoy. So yeah, exactly. So it really is just like a bygone era. Like I said, the newsagents, they still exist. I walk past them, I go in, but the magazine section gets smaller and smaller every year.
Yeah.
And there's just less of a selection, apart from what I would call the gossip magazines. Do you know those?
Yeah,
do you know
the
type of magazines? Yeah. You know, these, oh my God, Kim Kardashian fucking has a fake robotic ass or whatever the cover story will be. It's always just some like ridiculous celebrity-led crazy story.
Yeah, it's like gossip, guns, and some kind of sport. There's always something of that variety in magazines, or cooking stuff.
And it even feels like those magazines are probably mostly bought by doctors and dentist receptionists, so they can leave them on the waiting room table.
There's a lot left. The kind of holdouts, because they're sort of evergreen, disposable topics, but there used to be a lot more of those around as well. Although they still do some nice editions. Like I picked up me missus a couple of ones it was like a Princess Di Women's Weekly special, and it was about $20 instead of $5. But you know, it was at least 100 pages, and it was the glossier, thicker paper and all that. Not so much the thinner ones like the usual weekly ones. But so you do occasionally get some stuff like that, or there's often a few specials here and there on the Royals or Prince Charles or whatever that are like nicely presented, or Taylor Swift or something like that.
And like another kind of practically dead genre of magazine are the old lads mags that weren't quite,
Oh yeah,
you know,
yeah. This
not
the
quite like,
FHM in Australia was a big
yeah,
one.
that type of stuff where it's not, you know, it's not quite, you know, adult material, but they'd have plenty of like
Yeah, they
half
would have
naked
like
women
Buffy
and
on the cover, or what's his name that's in I Know What You Did Last Summer and Party of Five in it.
yeah, they'd be you know, just, you know, focused on broads and boozing and sports
Yeah,
and being a lad and being a man
yeah,
and here's a pair of tits. Look at these tits, and now
yeah,
read the football results and
yeah. It's
drink a
like the
beer
old
and be a
bloody
man.
Page 3 girls and all that.
Yeah, and that's another. Yeah, I don't even see those type of magazines. I don't even know if they exist anymore because, you know, once again, if you're looking for if you're looking to look at a pair of boobs, your phone's probably the best place to go these days. You know.
They used to have one in New Zealand, which was like it was more of a newspaper, but it was a magazine tabloid store, and it was called The Truth, and that would sometimes have some kind of soft core boobs or something in it. But that would occasionally have pull-out posters. I had a couple of really cool Ninja Turtles pull-out posters from that. And I didn't get to look at the rest of it. It's only because someone in the house had bought it. It wasn't for child stuff. But for whatever reason, you had some naughty stuff in there and salacious things. Then, here's this cartoon poster for the kiddies in the middle, but who can't look at the rest of the newspaper/magazine.
TV guide magazines as well. They're dead as a dodo, surely.
Oh
Like
yeah,
who needs to
New
buy
Zealand had its
that?
own TV guide. It was a little small thing that had the listings for the TV stuff, but they would have bits in the front going on about different shows. I remember when Star Trek: The Next Generation ended, there was all these letters going STTNG, and I didn't know what the hell that letters meant. All these people going, "Why is the show ended? What's going on? Why is it finished?" And I'm like, "Well, it's not made in New Zealand. No one's got any answers in New Zealand. What's happening with this American-made show?" And I was reading through these stupid letters because I would just read them each month, not knowing what the hell they were talking about until finally I worked it out later on. It was Star Trek: The Next Generation, because they all wrote STTNG, and I'd never seen it in print like that before to know what the heck they were all talking about. I thought it was saying Sting or something, not wrestling Sting, but the way it was written, ST : I was like, Sting, or is it Dick Tracy or Sting? What the hell is going on?
Yeah, you used to be kind of depending on the listings to even give you like a blurb of what the movie was about or whatever,
Yeah,
you know, the
the
show was
midday
about.
movie.
The midday movie, Gremlins 2, 2.5 stars by some guy who wrote this TV guide.
Yeah, you needed the TV guide back then because you didn't know what the hell was on or when it was going to be on. There was no other way of knowing what random stuff would be on there. Like, how would I know
And
at like midnight on Friday night they're going to be playing like The Critic or Duckman and stuff like that?
well, that was the beauty of it as well. If you were in possession of a VCR and you're into taping stuff
Liquid
off the
TV.
TV, didn't the TV guide also sometimes give you like the record codes for certain shows that you could do your
Not
VCR
not the New
timer? That used
Zealand
to be a
one,
thing.
but it would just have like general times for stuff. Sometimes things would get preempted by live sport and shit like that, or it'd be watching. They used to have in New Zealand often on late night TV, 11 till midnight or midnight till 1. They would play like first run shows of American comedy. As I watched like the John Larroquette show, he used to be on Night Court and all that, but he had his own show. And there'd be stuff like Martin or In Living Color. But they would play it at like 11 o'clock at night, never in prime time. I don't know why, just the market they wouldn't. And then you would sometimes get repeats and other stuff like that, and just weird comedies or adult cartoons and things. So me and my mates used to sit up late and watch them and talk about them in school and what was on and what random things would be on late at night.
And of course, each of the magazines or a lot of them would have their own like end of year special. They might do like an annual where you get an extra fat version of the magazine with extra
Like that one
pages and
was
extra pictures.
2007, the year ahead, the Games Yearbook,
Yeah,
Top 40.
used to love those type of specials.
I've
Year
got
in
a few like
reviews.
that. of my regular ones where there's like a special edition where it was just all like counting down the top 100, and it wasn't even the regular magazine. It was like a yearly special or annual where it's just all original content, no previews, just all going on about like all kinds of specials or good stuff or retrospectives and all that. And
Awesome. Yeah, it's like I've said many a time, a bygone era, and it's the end of the era now. I really do feel like as we push deeper into, like, we're in 2025, I predict by 2030 we're going to be having like a minuscule selection of these titles on the shelves.
Total overdose.
Yeah,
I've got a few other ones that are way down the bottom of my pile that are too heavy to get out of there. Like I've got like an Edge one that's like about 200 pages that they put out. That's just all essays, like a page each, going on about like top 100 games like Zelda, Metal Gear Solid, and stuff like that. But they're full page essays with no ads or anything. That was like quite pricey. So I've got a few other cool specials like that. Empire's done quite a few specials over the years about like not just their monthly like top 100 movies all the time, but actual specials like a whole thing just on Indiana Jones, like stuff like that. They've done some really cool, nice ones.
Yeah, well, look, I definitely like to hear from anybody who's watching or listening today what magazines they picked up back in their youth. Do you still pick up magazines today? Is there still something?
Are you a magazine fiend?
Are you a magazine fiend? Like, I can tell you, I would rarely buy a magazine these days. There's just not a lot there. Maybe the odd issue of Retro Gamer. I think I bought a Retro Gamer last year that was looking specifically at Resident Evil. But apart from that, a very, very rare occasion I would have.
I used to get them
pick
at
up
my
a magazine.
local news agents where I lived, whereas now there's nothing around here as far as anything I would actually buy anyway.
There had been another wrestling magazine that had started up in, I think it was like 2019. It actually had a lot of the old Power Slam crew were kind of writing for it, but then
cool.
Unfortunately the big global shutdown came the year
Yeah.
after, and I think that killed it off as a print format. It went to digital, so too bad. But we'll see. Who knows? Maybe in the future it will make a comeback. Maybe there'll be some big I don't know, some weird technological incident globally that will cause us all to retreat back to paper and pen and ditch the digital realm.
Sometimes you get there are odd niche kind of fanzines and fan magazines and small print runs that are around, stuff like that. That channel, I forget the name of it. Bloody guy that does all sorts of 70s toys and that. I can't remember the name of it now because I haven't watched it for a while. Heck, it's gone. That was reducted. Pod Stallions podcast, and then that channel, the guy's name is Brian or something, but he does all like 70s toys and Migos and all that. But he's put out his own magazine a few times, and it's all kind of like fan made and that, and contributors and that.
And I'm sure many of our viewers who are collectors at various points probably used to get collecting magazines. Like I used to buy one called Area 51. It was like a relatively popular magazine, reading lists of items and their prices like it was the fucking Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, we used to get bloody like Wizards, Overstreet's comic book price guide, and you had like previous catalog and stuff at the comic shop where they were just like things to order things or lists of prices for things and all that. All that got eventually replaced by digital stuff, but there wasn't a lot around back then.
And I don't know, like, don't get me wrong, I know when you're collecting physical stuff, you build up clutter and all that, and it is nice sometimes to be able to go on to something like the archive you showed us earlier and just kind of
I've kept any special editions of ones, and I kept like I've picked out ones that just had like really cool covers or issues that actually meant something to me. I might have a letter in this issue or something, but I've gotten rid of a heap of stuff over the years just for space. But particularly the I've kept more of the video game ones, whereas the film ones, a lot of them I've just like gotten rid of here and there. But I've kept any special edition ones or fancy like once a year book editions. I kind of keep ones like that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, folks, like I said, definitely let us know, drop a comment, tell us about your magazine memories.
Yeah,
If you
tell us if
do
you've got
still
any
collect
top
some
favorite
items.
ones you used to buy or read or whatever. Like, I used to read ones at the public library too. Before I could afford to buy stuff, I started reading. Hyper was at the Fremantle Library, so I used to read it every month before I could actually buy
Tell us about those dirty magazines you used to read off the
it.
top
Yeah.
shelf. You cretins, you perverts. Tell us all about that stuff.
All your penthouse and playboys
Yeah.
trying to be with the highfalutin articles and whatnot, and some of them were so much fluff.
Did you contribute to the penthouse hat stories? You know, you could these readers' stories.
I feel bad for some of those people that got paid to make up these nonsense stories now, because like you're under a deadline working to a monthly schedule trying to make up some bullshit.
Yeah, the blue review. Yeah, great times, I have to say, and loved talking about it and reminiscing.
Yeah, well, thanks for tuning in. Let us know if you get in the comments there if you got any ones you used to enjoy back then or now or whatever, or
Or in the future, maybe you plan
or in the
on
future,
taking up
future
magazine buying.
magazines.
Who knows? Who knows? Future Tech, Future Tech Weekly
Tech Noir
publication.
Magazine 2099. Judge Dredd Magazine. There you go. It'll still be around in the
Magazine,
future, but
yeah.
then I mean,
Magazine for a mega city.
yeah. Okay, we'll catch you next time, guys.
See you later, folks.